Hi, my name is Richie. I am the youth pastor for Family Church in Chino Valley. I was asked here to come and share my testimony, a little bit about where I'm from. I grew up in an area near Sacramento, and as a kid, I remember one of my first childhood memories. I was about 5 years old. We're getting ready to watch a movie with the family, and I heard a noise outside, and I seen my brother's friend running down the street. He had just gotten jumped by these gang members, and he ran into his apartment and he grabbed a gun and he shot 2 men in front of my house. Basically the first childhood memory I have that I can remember real clearly. And as a young child, that filled me with a lot of fear. You know, I was scared. And going to school, I remember a lot of kids talking about how they wanted to be doctors or, you know, firefighters, police officers, and all these things. And I idolized my brother, you know, looked up to him a lot, and I saw that he was a gangster and he was feared and respected, and I wanted to be just like him because I wanted to be feared also so that I would feel safe. And so I did that from a young age. I started following my brother around and trying to be just like him and even better. At the age of 10, my brother's wife got me hooked on methamphetamines. I started doing drugs, running with gangs, until I was 13 years old when my parents separated. When my parents separated, my mom kind of just went one way and disappeared, and my father did the same thing. He disappeared, and my brother was doing his first term in prison, and I was alone. And so I found myself homeless in the streets of Sacramento, young, scared, not really knowing what to do. I started selling drugs and running with gangs and just doing some pretty horrible things with some pretty horrible people. And it got me into a lot of trouble. I was in and out of juvenile correction facilities throughout most of my young teenage years, all the way up until I was 13 when I got expelled from school for sales and possession of methamphetamine. And then at 17, I was put in a boys group home in Oakland, California, where I went back to school for the first time in many years. I completed 1 year of high school. At 18, the principal was giving me an opportunity to, if I can just do 1 more year, she would graduate me, but I couldn't do that. I was homeless, I had nowhere to go. So I returned back to the streets and started selling drugs again and gangbanging. And that's where I got wrapped up into some bad situations. I was supposed to kill a couple guys. I got scared, I didn't want to do it. And these 2 guys were shot, and 2 other ladies that were there were shot as well. 2 of them died, and I was incarcerated at the age of 18 for 2 murders in the first degree, 2 attempted murders, 6 gang enhancements, and wrongful use of firearm. I spent 3.5 years facing the death penalty. It took 3.5 years and $60,000 to get me out of that. I was able to beat that case, and most would think that when you've gone through an experience like that, that you would just kind of change your ways, but I didn't. I went right back to the streets. I was put on what they call a hit squad. Basically, we were supposed to do things and further into the gang to handle situations that needed to be dealt with, and that's what I did. I did this until I met my wife, and she had a little girl that I fell in love with. Something about the idea of being a father changed me. It made me want different for my life. Didn't really know what I wanted, but I knew that I wanted to raise this little girl. And so my wife and I decided to move to Arizona. Trying to find a job and move forward and be a good person with the record that I had on me was hard to do. And so I went back to selling drugs after trying to find jobs and couldn't do it, and got into some trouble out here in Arizona with the police. The police basically, they came to my house and they told me that they couldn't find anything, but that they were gonna keep their eyes on me and investigate me. And eventually when they did find something, they were gonna try to stack charges on me and make sure that I'd go away for a long time. And this put fear into my heart, because I've done jail time before on my own, but being a father, leaving them alone was something I couldn't conceive. We moved to Chino Valley, where I met this really sweet lady. I opened the door for her at the post office, and she shared with me about her church and invited us to go. And one day my wife and I were arguing in the car, and I kind of slammed my fist on the dashboard, and the address for this church popped out. We decided to go. I was at rock bottom. I was about to lose my house. I couldn't find a job. I was going to lose my car. I was going to lose my wife. She was going to take my kids, and I really didn't know what else to do. We went to this church really just to kind of make my wife happy. I wasn't really interested in going, but I knew I had to do something. When we started going to this church the first time, I remember feeling like the room had went dark, and it seemed like everything that was coming out of the pastor's mouth was directed directly towards me. I just remember feeling this presence. This church, nobody looked at me like I didn't belong. You know, I walked in with tattoos everywhere and dressed like a thug, and nobody looked at me different. Nobody judged me for the way that I looked. Everybody was very welcoming, and they accepted me there. And they just started showing me a love that I'd never experienced, a Christ-like love, and it really had an effect on me. I remember hitting my knees the first time going there and just crying, because I'm hearing this pastor talk about how God loves me, and he sees past all the things that I have been, you know, all the horrible things that I've done. And that was something that was hard for me to understand. The second time we went back to this church service, people started coming up to me and handing me money. And at the time, you know, we didn't know anybody. Nobody knew me or my situation, but they started handing me money, and I put it in my pocket. And at the end of the service, a guy came up to me and told me that it wasn't enough. God told him to give me more. And so I went into the back bathroom and I counted it, and it turned out to be exactly what I needed to pay my rent, all my bills, and everything I needed to stay, you know, in a good position. And what was crazy to me, it was the exact amount that I needed, not a penny more, not a penny less. And to me, that was just really an eye-opening miracle that God was watching, that God is a Father that knows all of our needs, and he was giving me a chance. You know, I could either take this money and go get drugs and do what I know how to do, or I can take this as an opportunity to get out of my rut and move forward. That's exactly what I did. The more I began to follow him and realize what my identity was, that I was no longer a thug or a gangster, that I was a child of God, and that I had an authority that was given to me because of Jesus and his death, burial, and resurrection, I began to stand on these truths and speak to my life and watch things begin to change. And I'm just really grateful for that old lady. She passed away this year, and I'm just really grateful for her giving me the opportunity to learn who God is and to learn who I am to him. It's just been awesome watching God radically transform me from a gangster to a youth pastor.